Welcome to the Cyber Distortion Podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 6, and we have a really exciting episode for you. In fact, this is probably one of the most important, if not the most important episode that we will produce. And I say that because there will be really tangible takeaways that you should take out of this episode that will hit perfectly for you personally. And so stay tuned. Before I get into that, I want to share some exciting news. Cyber Distortion has released their own blog website. You will want to check this out. Stay up to date on the latest in cybersecurity trends and information by going out to the Cyber Distortion blog website and looking at all the latest information we have out there. Needless to say, we've used some pretty cool tech to help us generate some of this stuff. I'm not saying what kind of tech that is, but some really cool information out there, and you will want to look at it. Secondly, and almost more importantly, we've also released our very own Cyber Distortion swag shop. That's right, you can get the coolest of swag, like the Party Ape. You can get sweatshirts, t-shirts, hoodies, pint glasses. We have so much out there. It is its own little marketplace of goodness. So check it out. We want you to get out there. Kevin, how can they find it?
Well, Jason, I'm glad you asked. We are going to put the links right here on the screen for you to make it easy for you. And to make sure that you're actually using it, we're going to offer up a discount code too. So at some point in this episode, we're going to audibly give that code away, probably towards the end, and we're going to put this in our description as well. On the links you see on the screen right now, that will take you to both either the blog post or the swag shop, and anything you can do to help us get the name out about the podcast, we really appreciate. We got Black Hat, we got DEF CON coming up, perfect opportunity to wear some of the swag out there and help us promote the podcast. So we really appreciate it. Appreciate any support we get, and we're gonna reward you with a discount for doing that.
So check out that swag shop, and now join us for this episode of the Cyber Distortion Podcast.
Episode 6. You are the weakest link.
Well, let's jump into this, Kevin. So this episode tonight, I'm excited about for a lot of reasons. But, one of the things that really, really, really gets me thinking about why I'm so excited about it is the fact that it just is so on point to something, at least one or two things that everyone will be able to say, wow, I'm going to try that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to do something with that, and it will be effective. Okay. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to guarantee to this audience.
Wait a minute. What are we doing here? What's this guarantee?
I'm good. I'm guaranteeing. That's what I'm doing. I'm guaranteeing to this audience that there will be at least one takeaway that they can personally implement and receive the effects of, the positive effects of.
At least one. I would hope there's at least 10.
Oh, maybe. But hey, success is walking away with something that you've given them. And I believe we can give them at least one very powerful key by the end of this episode.
I have no doubt we can. I'm 100% sure of it because I've already seen them. I know what they are. I got a head start. Yeah. So we're going to go there. And I think, Kevin, let's just talk about this thing. Let's get into the meats and potatoes of it. So how do we want to reveal all of this good, juicy stuff? Well, We could start with a story. I always kind of like to start with a story to kind of correlate what we're going to be talking about to the topic.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. So I call this story "The Problem with a Shitty Chain," and you remember the title? You
Yeah.
are the weakest link. The problem with a shitty chain. Okay, so when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike a lot. My bike wasn't always the best in the best shape because it got rode a lot and it got rode hard. Let's just say that I had to replace my chain or repair my chain many times, almost on the daily. And I learned through all of that because I used to make several trips to the store for my father, bless his soul. He used to offer me $10 when I get home from school to go run to the store. This is back in the day when you could go run to the store and get your parents cigarettes. So I would run up there.
Is that what you were doing, Kevin?
Yeah, it wasn't for me.
Your parents cigarettes?
Wasn't for me, Jason. I promise you. They did give me a funny look, though, every time I'd walk out the store to see if I was going to go around the corner to start smoking them. But no, I'd get Benson Hedges lights for my dad. That was his brand. I'd get him a Coke, get him a Mr. Goodbar. That was his every day. When he'd get home from work, that's what he wanted. So I'd go get that, bring it back to him. But in the process of making my rounds and knowing I needed to get back up there quickly because I wanted to play the arcade games. That's the whole reason I went up there. I want to play arcade games. He always give me a little of a keep the change kind of thing there. So I could use the change to go back and play the games. But I knew if I didn't get back up there quick, there'd be other kids that were getting out of school that would beat me to the punch.
Yeah.
And so I had to get back up there and stake my claim, because back this day when you could put a quarter in the machine and play all night.
Yeah.
All these, Pac-Man, Defender, Galaga, all the good ones, So I learned the hard way that it only took one shitty link in your chain to make the whole chain worthless.
Mm.
And so I kind of correlate the chain to the story. The topic of this story is all about how we are the weakest link. We are that broken chain or that broken link in the chain that we need to learn how to fix. We need to learn how to repair it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the story. A little bit cheesy, a little bit of a roundabout way to get to the topic, but the fact of the matter is we are all weak links.
Well, I get it now. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? That when you look at the unity of a chain and the function of a chain to work together, all the links work together to get the bike moving, to make the machine operational, to get you somewhere. In an organization, we're all operating together to make the organization operational and get somewhere. And only one link in that chain falls apart or gets compromised, then the chain can really literally become unfunctional. Yeah. And when it's unfunctional, the entire operation becomes unfunctional. And when the entire operation becomes unfunctional, then guess what? You're not getting anywhere. And if you're not getting anywhere, that pack of cigarettes isn't being bought. There's something that's not happening that might be important. So in this case, probably wasn't that important about a pack of cigarettes, but in an organization,
Oh, it was. It was. If you knew my dad, it was.
Yeah. In an organization, the breakdown of an organization can be the breakdown of a supply chain, right? Or the breakdown of a community or a school system or a family, right? And the fact that even within our own families, we're all chains and we are a chain and we're links in that chain. And the breakdown of a link in that chain could be the fact that your information is compromised and your livelihood is taken from you.
Yep.
Right? So there are many implications of it as to why we are the weakest link. So without saying it, but saying it, this topic is extremely important. This topic is personally important and should be for everyone, regardless on who you are in the workplace world or in the civilian, community world that you live in. This topic should be important for you. How can you fortify yourself so that your link in the chain is not as weak as all the others? Right? And if we're all focused on that, then together we can be a very solid chain moving forward.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
I gotta tell you, it was kind of sounding doom and gloom for a moment, and now it started to sound better. But now it sounds like you're going back to the gloom and doom again. So cue the record scratch off sound effect again.
Oh, that one?
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, that one. So now let's get into the details of why, we're saying these things and why it's so important.
Yeah. So I remember this quote, and I've quoted this a few times in our cyber training at my organization too. One of the most famous hackers ever quoted this, and he says, a company can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and other security technology. But if an attacker can call on one trusted person in the organization and that person complies and the hacker gets in, then all of that money spent on all of that technology is essentially wasted.
Yeah.
Man, truer words have never been spoken in our world. That guy, by the way, Jason, who's the world's most famous hacker? You know who I'm talking about?
Mitnick.
Yeah, Kevin Mitnick.
I was going to say me because it rhymes with Mitnick, but it's Mitnick.
You were the second one. You would have been my second guess anyway. But yeah, indeed it was Kevin Mitnick. So he said that, and he's true. That's the importance of the role we play being the human element in security. People don't realize that. I don't think a lot of people can appreciate the fact that not only are you one of the most vital roles in security, you're also the last line of defense. Yeah. Because when all the technology and the security that we do spend the hundreds of thousands of dollars on, when that fails us, that's where user awareness training comes in. That's what this episode's all about tonight. And IBM did a study recently, and this is fascinating. 95% of all security breaches, 95% of all security breaches result from human error. So crazy to think about that. They're not the only ones that have provided that particular stat. But if you do the math in your head, and I know there's a lot of people, I can hear it in my head, out there punching their calculators trying to figure that out. That's 19 out of every 20 breaches that we hear about in the news were the result of what? Human error.
Human error, baby. Human error.
So that's not a typo. That's a legit fact. That has actually been a fact since, ever since before I got into cybersecurity. It's been over 90%. Human error is the result of most of the breaches you hear about.
Well, and let that sink in a little bit, because that is, like you said, 19 out of 20 of the breaches we hear about. Somebody made a mistake.
Yeah.
Right? Now, let's take that one step further and think about this. If that wasn't bad enough, there's a victim of identity theft in the U.S. alone every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Wow, man. So when you combine the two together, right? Human error, something being compromised, individually being compromised, identity theft happening every 3 seconds, man, we're giving hackers a lot of tools to work with to get in and create a breach. That's why the numbers are the way they are. So that's some hard things to really work with. In fact, 95% of those attacks on enterprise networks are a result of successful spear phishing campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
That's another hard statistic, and that's from the SANS Institute. 95% are done through phishing campaigns. Wow, man. So the individual human is being targeted, being attacked most often above every other tactic as a way of getting in.
In fact, as long as it took you to say that sentence right there, Jason, 40 more people just had their identity stolen.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And only one of them has to be the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that stuff, when people get a lot of what people don't realize is that when they surrender their credentials, or you reuse the same password on certain websites for other websites, and those websites get breached because they're smaller websites or their security just sucks or whatever. Your password's out there floating around the dark web, and those hackers can use that password on any website that they feel you might have an account on that's not forcing multi-factor authentication. And guess what? They can come in and they can sneak into that account as you. As long as that email address and that password works on one of those cloud-based software as a service solutions out there in the web, and there's hundreds of thousands of them, and we all use them.
Yep.
You might have given the keys to the kingdom to somebody out there. So keep that in mind.
Let's do this, Kevin. Let's run through a few more stats, and then let's come back into the second part of this, which is email threats.
The world's most notorious hacker states spending money on tools to keep yourself safe is important. But if a hacker can just call on one trusted person and get them to comply, and if the hacker gets in, then all the money spent on technology is essentially wasted. Cyber threats can come in many forms, from social engineering, privilege escalation, password cracking, spoofing, keylogging, SQL injection, cyber extortion, viruses, worms, and Trojans.
All right, we are back. And now we're going to get into some of the different types of email-based phishing types of attacks. So before I say what I'm going to say, let me first state that this is not an indictment on how vulnerable humans are. This is not a finger-pointing session here. We all know humans sometimes react on emotion, but it's a fact. We are all human, and we make mistakes. Sometimes we're not having the best of days. Sometimes we're having terrible days, and that can cause us to be a little more hasty in our decision-making process, which means we are more vulnerable to these types of attacks. So when I say our, and by our, I mean every corporation's biggest attack vector is between the keyboard and the chair. Humans. We are that attack vector. We are the biggest attack vector there is. So let's get into some of these types of attacks and talk about them. Now, this all falls into the category of social engineering, and social engineering is more of a broad reference that refers to lots of malicious types of activities that are focused on human manipulation at the end of the day. That's really what social engineering is. So when you think of social engineering, think human hacking. And while that goes way beyond just email threats, and we'll talk about some of those here in a minute that are non-email based threats, let's focus on the ones that are in the world of email based type attacks. And most of us know those as phishing, spear phishing, things like that. So Jason, let's get into this. Educate the people. What are some of these types of attacks they need to look out for in the world of email?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the basics. So phishing utilizes the art of deception. It's where an individual sends emails that seem to be from a legitimate source, like an order notification or a bank deposit, or hey, you did something wrong, click on this link because you need to have it corrected. But it's actually from someone attempting to gather information, sensitive information, by the way, from you, like your passwords, your bank account information, medical records. Sometimes, it's not even that complicated, right? They disguise the information that they're trying to get, because in your mind you're thinking, I don't have anything private that I need to hide. Why do hackers want to get this from me? And they might ask you something like, in order to do this, you have to answer this question about your grandmother's maiden name or something like that. And you're like, oh yeah, they don't really care about that. It's not a big deal. It's not super secret. but it might be a piece of the puzzle that they need for something else. These are targeted, right? They're on point. They are blasts of emails that go out to a number of different people to try to collect as much information as they can. And then once they collect all this information, they decide what to do with it. So they're looking for, whatever they can pull from you. And like I said, it might be very direct, like passwords, which they're getting by having you click and log into something. Or it might be very indirect, like your mother's maiden name, because you might click onto something and it's asking you to put in your mother's maiden name as a security, measure. And all they're trying to do is collect as much as they can to formulate everything they need to get into additional information. So here's some real world examples, and we'll throw a graphic up to share this stuff. Just regular email. An attacker sends out thousands of emails containing malicious links or attachments. Spear phishing. An attacker targets a specific business or individual and tailors the emails for that individual or the whoever their target. That's the spear part of that phishing attempt. Content spoofing is where domains that look legitimate but lead to modified pages that expose your information. Or vishing, where an attack takes place over a phone call, where these calls are normally automated messages that go to you and are asking to get information from you. One common one is, I'm Judy from the IRS, and you need to call us immediately at this number to do such and such. And you call the number, and there's somebody there asking you a bunch of questions, taking your information. Link manipulation. An attacker hides links in emails using various different techniques. And the last one is smishing, where they do a phishing campaign over text messages. And they do it in a way to get you to reveal information on a response or a link based on some text that they've sent you that leads you to want to provide that information. It's urgent, and you need to do this today. And you click the link, or you text them back at 997 and this information, and they take your information. These are common examples. We see this happening all the time. Our phones are blowing up with this stuff, and these are natural things that every individual has to take care of on a regular basis. You get these spam calls or these spam text messages or these spam emails, and you have to do something with them. So you have to learn what's legitimate and what's not, and then follow some practice around cleaning out what is good and what's not good. No matter what type of tooling you have in place to help you with that, these things still get through, and you have to, as an individual, practice good restraint on what you're working with and what you're giving up or clicking into. But, there's a lot of them people haven't heard of, Kevin, and maybe let's walk through some of the more complicated ones.
Yeah, for sure. I think it would also be helpful probably show an example of one of the ones you mentioned, Jason. You mentioned content spoofing. When you think about spoofing, someone out there is trying to get you to believe that you're going somewhere that you're not actually going. When in reality, they're going to redirect you towards a malicious website and try to get you to enter credentials or enter account information or enter a password, something that they can use to use against you later on. A perfect example of that is, take a look at this Amazon example that I'm going to put on the screen here. You can see here what's happening is they've registered a domain name that appears to be an Amazon legitimate valid domain, amazonsupport.com. But really, it's not an Amazon. It's not on the Amazon domain. I could register 30 names that have Amazon in the title. Amazon support, Amazon returns, Amazon invoicing, Amazon, whatever. Now, Amazon, being as large as they are, may have a lot of these already registered to protect themselves from this kind of thing. But they may have missed one. They may have missed many. And the point is, the hackers know that. So they're out there trying to use these reputable companies like Amazon as a way to trick us into thinking, oh, I'm dealing with Amazon. The domain says amazonsupport.com. When in reality, it's a malicious hacker that's gone out, registered that domain name, threw a couple of Amazon logos on the email, and now they've got you thinking that you're talking with Amazon. Now they'll send thousands of these emails out to people at the same time, just hoping for somebody to bite. And that's why they call it phishing. It's a phishing attack on many, not just one. Now, if they've gone to the trouble of like Jason mentioned, on targeted spear phishing, they've gone to the trouble to learn more about you specifically. Now they can target the message directly at you, so that even seems more convincing, but that takes more effort. So instead of going at cast a wide net and hope to get a few, targeted spear phishing is the opposite. Target at a few, but spend a little bit more time to make the message more relatable, more unique, more independent, specifically to you.
Yeah, it could be things like, they intercepted a message from Amazon to your account that said your order of socks has been, processed or is currently being processed. And now all of a sudden they send an email posing to be from Amazon saying, we have a problem with your sock order and your billing account. Click here to correct. And then now all of a sudden you're like, well, I did order socks, so I should probably click on this. And the next thing you know, you're in it and they're getting your information.
Yeah. And they'll use a lot of very generic, very, very generic messaging too, knowing that, a lot of people are dealing with a package issue or a delivery issue, things like that. Yeah.
And you touched on another good point, right? Like the domain name. The domain name is a common area for us as individuals to check first to see if this is legitimate or not, because the quality of that domain name will help us understand if it really truly is from the source we think it is or if it's from someone else. Now, this one is actually pretty well done because
it's good.
It
good.
Looks like it's legit, but this could be Amazon_support.com. It would look legit. An easy one to recognize would be like AmazonSupport1.com, where you start to have to question it. Right? Really, is this really Amazon? Why do they need to put a 1 behind it? Or
think about
supports with an S.
To that point, think about some of the things. I mean, even a company as big as Amazon, think about the thousands of variations of domain names that they have to think about and try to protect themselves by registering and paying for. By the way, these aren't free. That if they go out and register these copycat type domains, they're really doing that to protect us. They're not doing that because they want to. They're doing that because they really feel they need to, because they know people will be tricked by that. And think about one other thing before you get into that. I want to say, because you touched on this, when they're registering copycat domains, it's not always just the underscores or the way that they put an S at the end. Sometimes you can trick people just by, so if you put a letter R next to an N, what do you have? You have something that looks almost like an M, but you may not notice that in a domain name. So that would be a way to also trick the system is not actually register the real name, but just register something very similar that's going to look like it.
Right. You have to pay attention because we just don't, as humans, we just don't always pay attention to the finer details. We're busy. We're trying to get stuff done. We skim over a lot of stuff when we really should be paying attention to those details.
Yeah.
How about this one? So those were fairly common, but what about whaling, right? And you may have heard this before, but a whaling attack is a type of spear phishing attack that's targeted at high-level executives. They're going after the whales, the big dogs, and they're masquerading as some legitimate communication, and they're posing as trusted entities, and they encourage the victim to share highly sensitive information or to send a wire transfer or fraudulent something to an account that really isn't real. Now, the common example of this is your CEO sending you an email that says this is extremely important. You are the
Yeah.
one person that has this information. Everyone else is not available to do it, and it's time sensitive, and I need you to do it right now. Blah blah blah. Right. So they put you on the line with your executive, and force your hand to do something. Now, what's your choices? Contact my executive and say, hey, did you really send this? Well, some people won't want to do that because they want to risk the fact that they might look stupid calling their executive to ask if they sent this, knowing that their executive would never have done this, right? So that becomes a challenge, but they should, right? They should validate it in some form that this really isn't true. Or take the chance and delete it. And if it was true, you might get in trouble later. So, what are you going to do? I mean, ultimately, the best thing to do is validate it with the source. If this is really intended to be from your executive, you should contact your executive and say, I got this. Obviously they're posing as you. I don't know if this is true or not. What should I do with it? And then let it fall where it is. But that's
if executives are well trained by their IT teams, they're going to appreciate the fact that you did that. They're going to appreciate the fact that you came to them and asked, because they know you're trying to protect the best interest of the company. I like how they stuck with the phishing reference with the name whaling. So instead of targeted spear phishing, which is just at a normal individual, whaling, you're going for the big dog. That's pretty funny. Okay, well, here's another one, and you mentioned it. Whaling, where they're targeting the big fish, the business email compromise is actually also known as CEO spoofing. And you mentioned, where they're going to try to make you think that they are your CEO. And they need you to do them this big, huge favor. And, how about you wire some money to this account over here? And you got me, right? I'm about to be in the middle of a very important meeting. I can't do it myself, but I can count on you, right? We've all seen those. So that's the business email compromise one. And it's those two are very similar, but just a little bit different in how the tactic works.
Yeah, the first one is targeting, whaling is really targeting the executive themselves to give up credentials or information.
Yes,
and the business email compromise is really using the CEO's personality to target others to get information.
Yep. And usually they don't do enough research to know what's your CEO really, what's their tone like in email, or what are they really like? What's their personality like? They're just hoping for the best, right? And that's what's usually a dead giveaway, is watch for the tone, watch for the urgency, the sense of urgency they're going to try to convey, and I need that wire done quickly. And they're just trying to trick you into reacting on emotion. Again, we said emotion was a big thing with these things. It's true. So, hey, how about before we move on, I wanted to quickly share some fun facts on this stuff here.
Okay,
so we're going to be graphic intensive tonight. Okay. So we're going to throw another graphic on the screen here, and I'm going to show you some more facts about these types of phishing attacks. Fact number 1, 95% of all phishing emails pretend to be from Amazon, eBay, or a bank. So similar to how 95% of all phishing attacks are breaches are human related, 95% of the human related email attacks are pretending to be Amazon, eBay, or a bank. Very interesting. Fact number 2, links in online ads, status updates, tweets, Facebook posts, they can all lead you to a criminal portal designed to steal your financial information. So keep in mind that just because you're on a trusted site doesn't mean that the link in the ad you're looking at or the link in the post you're looking at is related to that trusted site. It could be redirecting you somewhere elsewhere. It happens a lot. Fact number 3, spear phishing incorporates details about the victim. We said this earlier. It's more targeted, so they're going to know things like your name, address, your employer, for example, and they're doing that to foster more trust. It seems more legitimate the more research they do on you and make it more personal to you. So keep that in mind. Fact number 4, phishing attacks are the most common type of cyber attack method today. So still, even though we have all these other attacks that we're going to talk about, it all kind of goes back to email at the end of the day. Phishing is the biggest one still today.
Well, let's add one more to this, the evil twin attacks. An evil twin phishing attack creates an unsecured Wi-Fi hotspot access point that baits unsuspected users into connecting. I've seen this all over the place. Once connected, all inbound and outbound data can be intercepted, including your personal data and financial information. Anything you're sharing over that wire can be compromised. Most common in public areas where you're likely to find free Wi-Fi, like coffee shops and libraries and airports and hotels and sporting events. Airports are a big one. It's easy. They're overpopulated with people, and people bored waiting on their flight.
Yeah, looking for that free Wi-Fi.
Yeah, looking for a free Wi-Fi. Conference centers, more specifically, cybersecurity conferences. For example, think DEF CON, right? And the wall of sheep. We know this happens because we see it every year.
Yep.
Yeah. But there are many others, and we can't cover them all. But, review this list we're going to put up here and Google it and find out about it. We really, really encourage you to do that, because there's a lot of different types of ways people try to collect that information.
Yep.
So Kevin, there's a lot. That's a lot of information.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And we haven't even started to touch on all the things that are not email based, which we should get into next. I think we should touch on some of the other things that you need to be looking out for to protect yourself. And there are many. And again, I said we're going to be graphic intensive today. We've specifically created this episode to do that, because there's a lot of information that we're sharing with you in a short amount of time. And this is the easiest way to do it. So take a look at this graphic here. It talks about how vulnerability comes in many forms. And as you can see here, these are many forms outside of just email, which is just item number 1 there on the list. So you got email, but you also have web browsing, online shopping. Think of online shopping, online retail. Even in snail mail, you can be phished for information through illegitimate malicious actors. You can be phished on your phone. Jason mentioned smishing. Well, all that is really phishing on your mobile phone through SMS text. That's why it's called SMS or smishing, SMS text phishing. You think about things like ATMs and gas pumps. What's the risk there?
Are you talking about like gas pump skimmers?
Skimmers. Absolutely, man. Skimmers. Yeah. You're good at this game. You almost act like you're in cybersecurity or something.
Maybe.
Yeah. So could be something as simple as unpatched software. We talk about that one all the time. You lose your wallet or your purse, or get your laptop stolen or your purse stolen. Those are all ways that someone might be able to get at your information. Obviously,
I think a lot of times people think about this stuff as all digital data, right? But
that's the problem.
Think about things like over-the-shoulder surfing to get your ATM numbers, right?
Yeah.
Or information you're putting in on an ATM, or the papers you're throwing out in your trash, and someone going through your trash and happens to pull up some important information about a bank routing number in our account that's tied to you, right? All of those things matter when they're putting together a script or a story that they're going to try to use to get more information. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there's many, many different ways. Those touch on just a handful of them. While we're throwing graphics and things on the screen, here's what a skimmer looks like, and these things come in many different shapes and sizes and variations. But this is what one of those might look like. So keep an eye out for this. If you're out pumping gas, or if you're out at an ATM and you're out, maybe you're on a sketchy part of town or something where people might not be so scared to use these things. Especially where there's ATMs and there's not a lot of cameras around. Be on the lookout for these kind of things.
Right. Yeah, this is a good one. Identity theft also is it's not a good thing, right? We do not want to give away our identity. And if you do happen to have your identity stolen? Here are some fun facts about that. Let's use our hypothetical working single mother, Mary Smith, in this example. So, if Mary's identity is stolen, Mary would stand to lose, this is our hypothetical Mary, would stand to lose an average of $1,100 of her money in an attempt to restore her credit if her identity is stolen, right? On average, it will take about 6 months before her credit is back to normal.
That's on average.
However,
it can take longer.
That's on yeah, right? However, getting her credit back to normal is no easy task. It'll take about 200 hours or 25 work days of her time sending letters, making phone calls, calling and doing research to get her credit back online to where it was, because her credit has been tainted by someone anonymous that has been doing really bad stuff that has been showing up on her credit. This is time she's not going to get back, right? There's a lot of effort put into this just to get her credit back to normal because our identity was taken. There's an example of, with this image on the screen. There's a lot involved with your identity being taken from you. And that's just on the surface. That's just what she needs to do, much less if that identity is used in an attack to get more information, or used to get her corporate credentials or something to that effect. The ramifications of that identity could be even greater. So We talked about tactics and techniques, Kevin, and that malicious actors use, and what they all mean and why it's important and why they do these things. Knowing these tactics exist, is there one thing that people should be able to do that is the most important altogether that we need to share with them?
Yeah, so I think this is where we need to switch gears a little bit and talk about, it's one thing to know that the tactics exist. I mean, we've talked about a lot of them here. There's many out there. It's one thing to know they exist. It's another thing entirely to know how to protect yourself from these things. So I think what we're going to do now is shift gears a little bit and get into what red flags do you need to be looking out for to protect yourself. This is where we get into the actionable items piece of this episode that we talked about early on. This is where the real value is, right? So, Jason, what I'm thinking is we should take a quick break, come back, and then jump right into the red flags. What do you think?
Going to the red flags. Let's go.
All right.
Social media facts. 84% of all U.S. adults claim to have accounts set up on at least one social media site. 600,000 Facebook accounts are hacked every single day. 1 in 10 of all social media accounts have already been hacked, and 117 million LinkedIn user credentials for sale on their dark web for around $2,200.
So, in this part of the segment, we want to talk a little bit more about the red flags. There are known red flags, and we're going to walk through each one of these to kind of give you more insights into the things that you should be looking for that can help keep you safe. Remember, tangible things that you can take away. This is one of those areas that we're going to reveal 7 tangible things, that the top 7 tangible things that you can use from a social engineering standpoint that are red flags to look for. The first one here is if you don't recognize the sender or the domain. We talked about this earlier. The domain could look a little funny. The email wasn't sent from a familiar contact in your contacts list, but contains content in it that is kind of questionable. That's a red flag. And if anytime a red flag goes up for you, the simple thing to do is delete the message. You do not have to take action in any emails that you've received. And if they're important enough, my philosophy is you're going to get it again.
Yeah, by the way, Jason, before you get into number 2, let me really quickly interject. One thing that I've done is throughout user awareness training, I tell our employees, print this thing out, paste it on your wall. If you're not familiar with what the red flags are and you don't think you can just remember, have this thing on your wall so you can refer to it. If you get a suspicious looking email, look up there and see how many of these red flags are in the email. That's a good indicator that you should probably just ignore it.
Yeah, very good advice there. Number 2, you were CC'd on an email but don't recognize any of the other recipients. The email was sent to an unusual mix of people in your organization. That's probably a good indication that they were just trying to throw a wide net out there to some people and see who was going to bite.
That's your first indicator. It's a massive fish.
Yeah. Number 3, hover over the links before you click on them to confirm the domain. I tell my employees this all the time. If there's something questionable, hover over it. Look what the domain is. Look for those suspicious or questionable tags or construction of the domain that might cause you to throw up a red flag. Avoid clicking on misspelled and unusually long hyperlinks. That's a good indication that it's a phishing attempt.
Yeah.
Number 4, the subject line is irrelevant or doesn't match the message content. This happens often. The email is asking for a response or to something that you've never sent or requested for. So pay attention to the information that's in the email. Number 5, the email contains compromising, threatening, or exploitive content. Common tactics to make you really concerned or agitated or know that this has to happen. We've got this information on you, or this is an urgent request and you have to take care of it now, or some really bad things can happen to you or your account if you don't do it. There are multiple spelling and grammar errors or illogical sentences usually in these types of emails. Number 6, you receive a routine email, but far outside normal business hours. It's something you would expect to get, just not when you got it, 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And number 7, there is an unexpected or suspicious attachment in the email. The email contains potentially dangerous file types, and the email is constructed in such a way that they want you to open it. You should definitely avoid those.
Absolutely.
So as Kevin said, I would definitely post this up, go through it, look at it, reference it often. But Kevin, you were sharing with me a unique story about a social experiment. I thought it'd be good to share that.
Yeah, it is a really interesting experiment that a company was paid. It was a security consulting firm, came in, and they were paid to come into a company, mid to large size company, and socially manipulate or try to manipulate the employees there. The company needed to know, where do we stand in our security posture as it relates to user awareness. So the company came in and they did an interesting thing. They said, okay, we're going to do this in a phased approach. And the first phase is going to be your basic phishing. So they came in and they said, okay, we're going to phish all the employees. And as you might expect for an untrained company, they phished the employees and there was a pretty high failure rate. Now, if you had to guess what you thought that failure rate would be, Jason, what would you think the percentage of employees would be that might click on a phishing email if they're not trained to look out for these red flags we just talked about?
97%.
It was bad. It wasn't quite that bad. It was 80%.
All right. I was going to say 80.
80%, which is still very, very high. Obviously, remember, we talk about this all the time. Hacker only needs one of us to mess up, right? It only needs to happen once. We have to be right every time. They only have to be right once. So they trained the employees. They put them through a rigorous employee awareness training process through classes and things, and taught them some of the red flags to look for. So they came back and they said, okay, we're going to come back in 3 months and we're going to test your employees again, but this time they're not going to know we're testing. And we're going to see what the failure rate is when we come back. So they came back 3 months later, ran a very similar test, and wanted to see what the percentage was of the employees that would fail the phishing test the second time around. So if you had to guess, how effective do you think that training was? What percentage of the employees do you think failed the second time?
15%.
Oh, man. That would be good if it were only 15%.
I'm guessing, man. I'm guessing.
The answer is 50%. 50%. Ooh. Yeah, exactly. 50% of the employees still failed the user test after awareness training, one round of user awareness training. So that just goes to show, even though you can train your employees, user awareness is an ongoing process, and it's always going to be an ongoing battle. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
The second phase of this social experiment gets more interesting. Here's what they did. So they got USB thumb drives, and they started placing them in random areas throughout the company. They put them on top of coffee machines. They put them on top of urinals. They left one or two out in the parking lot. Just random places, the break room. Because obviously malicious files can be placed in a company, and that can contain a backdoor, a Trojan virus, it can contain a ransomware. Yeah. And hackers do this. Hackers will use this technique because it's easy prey. So they place these things around, and they could track how many of these devices, and they only used 10 devices. And they could track how many of them individually were inserted into a system in that environment. How many do you think of those 10 got inserted into a computer within that organization?
Well, it depends. First of all, what was on the device? Was there something on it?
You don't know. I mean, curiosity killed the cat, right? You're looking at this thumb drive that has nothing on it, and you're wondering,
no title,
nothing.
No title, no nothing. It's just random.
Nothing.
I would say 70% of them.
Close. 80%.
Wow.
Think about that, man. 80% of the 8 out of the 10 were not just turned into the front desk and said, hey, somebody lost this, lost it.
Yeah.
They were so curious what was on that stupid thing that they had to go stick it in their machine to try to see what was on it, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's phase 2. Now, this I've already proven it's very easy to get into this organization's into their network, right? You've already established a backdoor 50% of the time successfully, even after training through phishing. 80% successfully with a USB stick. Get this, phase 3. They took a DVD. And, granted, this is back when DVDs were a little more popular than they are today, but they took a DVD, they put a custom label on the DVD, and it said XYZ Company, whatever the company name was. And we'll use today as an example. It said 2023 salary information with bonus info. And they threw this jewel case with this DVD out there. Same thing they did with the USB sticks. But they were trying to determine what percentage of those things would be successful in being viewed. What do you think? Do I even need to say? What do you think the success rate?
Everybody and their grandma did it. Well, First of all, provided that they had a DVD player, everybody and their grandma would have done it.
Okay, so let's assume this is 10 years ago, okay? Everybody and their grandma did do it. It was a 100% success rate because people are curious by nature, and you put something like that on the label that says salary information, bonus information. Who's not going to be curious to put that in the system? But that same device could have infected that network and allowed a backdoor or a beachhead into their network.
Right.
That's just the way people think.
And in today's world, that'd be like receiving a phishing email from your CEO that has a link in it that says salary information, and then having a follow-up email from the same CEO saying, "Oops, I wasn't supposed to send that to you. Please disregard it." Right?
Please disregard
it. You know darn well they're going to go back and open that thing up and then disregard it.
Yeah, absolutely. People are just, by the way we're wired, humans are curious. But the hackers know that, so they'll use that against us. So, hey, be on the lookout for these kind of things.
Yeah, well, Kevin, that was a lot of information. We have good tips on what to look for, and things that people can take away today. I mean, here the thing of it is that you have to train yourself. It is your responsibility to train yourself as an individual. Subsequent to that, we are trying to do the same thing. That's why we have this podcast. That's why we do it within our workplaces. The individual is the most vulnerable point. So the steps that you can take to help secure yourself and your activities and how you interact in this digital world keeps everyone safe. So those 7 tips that we gave you earlier are highly important for you to follow, because they will help you identify attempts that people are making, regardless if it's a smishing campaign, a vishing campaign, if they're dropping malicious links somewhere, sending emails from your CEO. Whatever it is, you have to be able to train yourself to interrogate everything. And that is the way to keep yourself safe, your organization safe, your community safe, your family safe. Interrogate everything. So that's kind of the summary of this story and what we've presented to you today. And, we do know that the one takeaway, the one guarantee, the one nugget is print out that last graphic of the seven tips and follow those 7 tips. And today you can walk away doing something effective that can keep you and everyone safe.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, we've covered a lot here, but the one constant is us, the humans. As long as we exist, as long as humans exist, we're just one more entry point into either our home networks, into our company networks, into our own identity. We are an entry point into someone coming in and trying to breach and steal our valuable data. So, you hear a quote that's used in cybersecurity circles quite a bit. There are 2 types of companies: those that have been breached, and then those that will be breached. In other words, nobody's immune to this stuff. It doesn't matter how much money we spend, doesn't matter how much training we do. Nobody's immune to it. Most companies will be breached at some point, but that doesn't mean that you have to be the breach point. And if you have that mindset, you can be a critical layer of your company's security, the most critical layer, because you are the last line of defense in this thing.
Very well said.
Yeah.
With that, we're going to close out this episode. I want to thank you all for joining us again. We ask you to be diligent in utilizing these tips. And until next time.
Wait.
Stay safe.
Discount code. So
we might have a discount code for you.
Yep. So we talked about the swag shop. Please, if you're going to be out at Black Hat DEF CON, pick up a t-shirt. Help us get the name out there. And we're going to give you a 15% off code for that. The prices are already pretty cheap anyway, but this is going to give you 15% off. Additionally, just use the code CYBER15. That code will be good for at least until Black Hat and DEF CON. So feel free to use it. We're not going to put a limit on the amount of times you can use it. You can reuse it if you want to. So it's out there, Cyber15. Enjoy it and help us get our name out there. We really appreciate it.
With that, we're signing off. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cyber Distortion Podcast. We're pleased that we now offer and have many options for consuming the content of our episodes. We offer the audio-only versions on all major streaming audio platforms. We offer video and audio formats, so you can take in all of the rich content visually if you'd like to. That's over on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@the-Cyber-Distortion-Podcast. Don't forget to help us grow the podcast by subscribing while you're out there. Feel free to drop comments on what topics you'd like to see us cover, for future episodes. You can also visit our brand new blog site. That's out at cyberdistortionpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter. @DistortionCyber is our handle. We release discount codes, blurbs about upcoming episodes, blog links, and of course, talk about drop locations for swag while we're out at various cybersecurity conferences like Black Hat and DEF CON. Speaking of swag, we have officially opened up the long-awaited Cyber Distortion swag shop, which is accessible either on our blog site at cyberdistortion.com or online directly at cyberdistortionswag.shop. We have tons of really cool new swag to offer to help get the name out about the podcast, and we're releasing new items all the time. We're offering lots of discount codes right now at the end of most of our episodes, so listen for those and watch the Twitter page because we drop those there as well. I believe that's it for now, so until next time, cheers everybody, take care, stay diligent, and remember, you are the last line of defense.